About half of them hiding their faces. They have come on the day, to the day, a year after the killing of Heather Heyer, the counter-protester in Charlottesville. A fact that we spent the morning with the counter-protesters weighs very heavily on their minds, Richard.
Vic, stay with us. I want to get back over to Garrett Hake. And Garrett, you heard some of the reporting there coming from Vic, and some of the messaging from one of what he estimates to be a couple dozen protesters there. How are the counter-protesters answering to those sorts of messages that we just heard from one of the white nationalist protesters?
I would say the messaging in response is not particularly nuanced, Richard. Is it that these people and their views are not welcome here? The signs of these Antifa protesters range from the much more mild no hate, pushing back on hate, the euphemistic no hoods in my woods, referencing KKK hoods, to much more specific, the biggest banner here, that the best way takes a bullet to bash a fash is the big banner sign that one of these groups are putting out here. Look, there is no question here that this is, I think, essentially meant to counterbalance the intimidation factor that sometimes takes place at these white nationalist marches. They very much want the people inside the security cordon behind our camera to know that they are out here and to know that that message isn't welcome here, and it will be met just as loudly and just as aggressively if the situation calls for it. It is not what I would consider to be a friendly opposition here. This is a group of folks who are ready to push back as loudly as they feel is necessary, Richard.
All right, Garrett Hake, Mike Vicara, thank you both so much. We're going to get back with you later in the hour as a lot is moving and so much can change very quickly. For now, I'd like to bring in our panel. We have got Todd Johnson, NBC BLK Editorial Director. We also have Gloria Brown Marshall, John Jay College of Criminal Justice Associate Professor of Constitutional Law and author of Race, Law, and American Society, 1607 to present. Mark Thompson, host of Make It Plain on SiriusXM Progress, and Amy Meredith Cox, Yale University Associate Professor of Anthropology and African American Studies and author of Shapeshifters, Black Girls, and the Choreography of Citizenship. Let's start with you on this, Gloria. You and I were talking before we got on set a little bit earlier. You're a civil rights attorney.
Yes.
You've worked in Alabama during some tough times recently. And we just listened there to one of the protesters who was, and I'll just reiterate what was said, he believes that there are those that want him dead. He also said that he loves everyone, and he feels like he is enslaved at the moment. He's saying he's not a racist, though. What's your response to what you heard?
I don't call this a white supremacist march. I call it a march of the Ku Klux Klan because that's what it is. And they've changed the name to make it fancy and make it nice and palatable. And their argument being made is an argument that could have been made in 1925 when the Ku Klux Klan marched in Washington, D.C. the first time.
Right.
And this idea that they are somehow enslaved because these other people, the other Americans, they don't want to share the country with us or anyone else who doesn't believe what they believe. And so the sense that they're the victim in this is really the sad part, and the fact that Donald Trump continues to pour gasoline on those flames. I mean, this idea of victimization means that these people are going to do whatever it takes to control their country, and that's what the Klan believed from the very beginning when slavery ended in 1865, and that's what we're dealing right now in 2018.
You know, you look at these pictures here, Todd, and we remember a year ago how quickly what was calm at one moment, or the appearance thereof, quickly changed, and Heather Heyer was then killed. When you're watching this, we're hearing the numbers are not what they thought. A couple dozen, right? And there were some estimates that they thought there were going to be 300-400 that were going to protest. And when they came out of the subway and they got there, it was only a couple dozen, at least so far. What are you watching out for here?
Well, I just think it's a matter of, like, to what end? What is the goal of even, a couple dozen folks showing up trying to proclaim that this country is somehow theirs and no one else's? And I think we saw this a lot during the election, leading up to Donald Trump's election as president. His voters, his supporters, talked about that they were the silent majority, not wanting to necessarily put a face on some of these elements that anti-racist activists abhor so much, the racism, the bigotry. And then we have this guy that Vic just talked to, not really wanting a label on how he feels and wanting to kind of have it both ways in a sense. And I think that's what makes a lot of critics, not only of this administration and how they've handled race, but critics of where we are as a country and the lack of progress we've made. That's what makes those folks so upset, because we talk about healing, we talk about progress, but it doesn't seem like we're seeing any of that in front of our eyes.
And then we're seeing here, Amy, a direct response, which is in the thousands compared to the couple of dozens that are there at the moment, and not wanting to be identified, as Todd was underlining there. How would you identify, you think, this group?
You know, it's interesting, and I think what we are called to respond to in this moment is to be clear about our definitions. So we spend a lot of time talking about the rhetoric, right? The language, the representation that we're using. This gentleman who doesn't want to be identified as a white nationalist, who's essentially a neo-Nazi. And so I think it's important that in this moment, we are very clear on the distinction between white nationalism and white supremacy. These are two different things that are directly related. So when we talk, we spend a lot of time trying to untangle white supremacy, which is an ideology, right? Which is a belief system that is a false belief in a superiority. Which white nationalism is the charge to demand a hold on political, social, economic dominance, needing white supremacy in order to enliven itself. But we spend a lot of time focusing how we respond to white supremacy as sort of an esoteric value system, or spending time focusing on language, when we really need to look at that connection between language, representation, value systems, and the way that policy and legislation and racist, violent acts play out. And so this is there's that space between, and there's a slippage in how we're using these terms. We need to be clear on that. Right. And I think we're seeing that, and it plays out in the ways that, whether we're talking about white nationalists or the protesters, envision themselves.
Right. And the way that you might put that into a framework that has been laid out by our first three discussants, and we bring you and Mark on this, and you look at some of the signs. I was just looking at one of them, no Islamophobia. White nationalists, by the description that Amy gave us, it's not white versus black, it is white versus all others that are not.
Right.
Well, that is the ideology, that white is supreme. That's the same philosophy Hitler had, the Aryan race, the master race. White House, who has stood with this president, has helped to enable what is going on today. The good news is, if your reporting is accurate, you only have a couple of dozen people out there. So that means there are more of us good people, more children of the light, as Dr. King would say, than children of darkness. But it also means that most of them are still on social media. You know, there are dozens of them on social media. They have no voice modulation control. They're always on social media, tweeting and sharing and posting on Facebook. Some of them are even Russian, we know. But we need to do a better job on social media calling them out. They've been called out in the streets. They're scared to come out today. That's good. There's more of us that are more of them, but we need to call them out, back them up, root them out, and push them back on social media as well.
We are watching live pictures here out of Washington, D.C. This, as a white nationalist group, is now proceeding for their protest, and a very large number of counter-protesters in these live pictures that we're bringing to you. Of course, the concern, please, no flashpoint, no violence. That is what the officials on the ground are asking for. We're going to take it straight back to Washington, D.C. Our panel's not going anywhere. We'll be right back.
Ooh, heaven is a place on earth.
I didn't believe it. Again.
Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth?
I want to believe it.
Ooh.
I'm not hearing the confidence. Okay, hold it in your price tool. Power options based on your budget. And
We'll make heaven a place on earth.
my angels.
Ooh, heaven is a place on earth.
TripAdvisor makes finding your perfect hotel relaxing. Just enter your destination and dates. TripAdvisor searches over 200 booking sites to find the hotel you want for the lowest price. Dates, deals, done. TripAdvisor.
It's Nutrisystem's Red Hot Sale. Celebrate summer and save 40% off every program, including Turbo 13. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month. Lose weight now. Money back guaranteed.
I'm Marie and I lost 50 pounds with Nutrisystem. I am so much healthier now.
Nutrisystem delivers your favorite foods made healthier. Perfectly portioned to fuel and satisfy.
Count, measure, meetings, not with Nutrisystem.
Order your 28-day program right now, and we'll rush you Turbo 13 with the new Turbo Takeoff Week with new foods. Plus a week of probiotic and delicious Turbo Shakes free to shrink your belly and lose weight.
You'll see results your very first week.
For a limited time, save 40% off every program.
Nutrisystem works.
Do it. Do it now. Don't wait. Go online or call 888-455-DIET and get shakes free plus 40% off every program.
Family taco night is a heartburn night you can plan for, but surprise pizza at the office means heartburn you didn't expect. Zantac works when you need it. It relieves or prevents heartburn in as little as 30 minutes and lasts up to 12 hours. Zantac. Eat your way, treat your way.
This is the era of digital possibility, when every connection is an opportunity to do more, to build a network of human progress, where every fiber-lit building, enterprise, and city we connect lays the foundation to our digital economy. Join us as we turn the promise of technology into digital progress. Together, Spectrum Enterprise.
Larry here from Cleveland Jewelry. Turn this into this. Have an heirloom piece? Keep the memory and make it new again. We designed it to create a new, one-of-a-kind custom design. Need some extra cash? We'll pay you top dollar for broken gold, diamonds, watches, Rolexes, and coins. We're located on the corner of Rockside and Northfield Road between I-480 and 271, next to GameStop. Don't throw it away. I'll pay you today.
Seen anything like that before in American governance? Did this thing actually end? Is it still going on? Am I asking the right questions here? That's the heart of the matter, right? Should those dots be connected? Do I have that right? Am I right to see it that way? How are we supposed to know? What do you make of that decision? Is that accurate? What does that sound like to you? Is that weird? What does that mean? Sounds a little nuts, right? Is it fair to say? What's going on with that? Why is this happening? Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Lots more to get to tonight. Stay with us.
And welcome back to MSNBC. We're watching breaking news coming out of Washington, D.C. This is a white nationalist demonstration and protesters there. We estimate at this moment a couple of dozen counter-protesters also in these live pictures, numbering in the hundreds, if not thousands, as we've seen so far. It's now 4:17 local time. Sunset in about 3.5 hours. A lot to watch here in the coming moments. And, of course, the concern is it's a repeat of what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, 1 year ago, when this very same group that is protesting here in Washington, D.C., that led to one death, Heather Heyer. It's now 1 year ago since she lost her life. One of the issues is our panel still with us here. Mark, you were bringing up the idea of social media. I mentioned just 2 dozen that are there that are part of this white nationalist demonstration. There is the criticism that perhaps we were over-magnifying their voice, number one, and number two, that social media is assisting in that over-magnification.
Of course it is, and that is what swells their numbers. They're all cowards. That's the nature of these individuals. So they blow it up on social media, and we can't even be too sure how many of them are, because social media has got to do a better job, Facebook, Twitter, and everything else, to filter out what's real versus what's a bot versus what's a Russian. But we don't really know how many there are, but there are obviously more right now. If you go on social media right now, more than there are even at this rally. So why didn't they come out today? Why are they afraid to come out? They don't want to be seen. So social media serves as the hood that the KKK used to use. They can hide under that hood of social media and not be seen.
And speaking of social media, President Trump did tweet yesterday on this very topic, and the way he decided to respond to the issue related to race relations, as he said, "I am proud to have fought for and secured the lowest African-American Hispanic unemployment rates in history. Now I'm pushing for prison reform to give people who have paid their debt to society a second chance. I will never stop fighting for all Americans." And hold your gunpowder for a second. NPR did a fact check on this in January after the president did imply, again, this very same point on low unemployment rates for African American, Latino Americans. And this is what they found. Rates had been falling for long before Trump took office, and their declines don't appear to have picked up speed. This implies that there's nothing specific that Trump did to change this rate. These rates have been falling relatively steadily since around 2010, early in President Obama's tenure in the White House.
Exactly, right? So he keeps trotting out these same statistics, and we know they're not really real. It has nothing to do with his administration. So he's trying to find a way to combat the fact that it is very clear, it's transparent now, that his entire rhetoric is built on a white supremacist ideology. It's revealed. We see this, and this is what emboldens this sense of self-righteous, white, racist indignation that we see. And it's interesting, I want to talk about social media for a second in a different way. So when we think about social media as a cover for white supremacists, I also want us to think about what is the charge that